My name is Che, and welcome back to my award-winning series on this channel, and today we also have a guest, so let's get straight onto the video. The first language on our list today is Romagnol. Romagnol has about 430,000 speakers in the Romagna region of Italy and the independent country of San Marino. It is part of the Gallo-Italic subgroup of the Romance languages, despite sitting in the heart of Italy. It has many dialects and is sometimes grouped in with Emilian to become Emilio-Romagnol. Here is a sample of Romagnol. As we can see, it looks quite like modern standard Italian, but also it reminds me of Arpitan from our last video. For some reason, I think it's all the shortenings in the words, the abbreviations. Now let's move on to our next language. African Romance refers to the Romance language developed in North Africa as a result of the Roman conquest of Carthage. It has no speakers today. The language is not even dead, it's just full-blown and extinct. It went extinct a long time ago. Evidence suggests that it coexisted for hundreds of years with the Punic language, despite the fall of Carthage. It is also the only living relative of Sardinian, Sardinian is the only living relative of African Romance today. And Sardinian is now an isolate, well, a sort of sub-isolate in the Romance languages. It's not related to any of the other groups of Romance languages. The language sadly died out and was replaced with Arabic after the Islamic conquest of North Africa in the 7th and 8th centuries CE. Unfortunately, we don't know much about the language. However, we do know that Augustine of Hippo spoke it as a native language, and he wrote about it in his free time. He explained that shifts occurred from Latin to African Romance that happened in other Romance languages, but he also described some unique features of it. This is where the similarities with Sardinian can be drawn, as African Romance retained the hard k, where other Romance languages softened it to a s when it comes before an I or an e. It also failed to distinguish between long and short vowels, therefore the difference between os and ossa was made because no one could distinguish between os and os anymore. We move on to our next language for today. Friulian has around 600,000 total speakers today. Most of them are actually native, which is usually not the case. It is part of the Rhaeto-Romance subgroup, making it related to Latin and Romansh. It is also the easternmost Romance language in Italy itself. Friulian has thankfully gained attention and is being taught well to the younger generations. There is even a Friulian university in the city of Udine. The sample shown here is the same story that I used as an example for Romansh, so I thought it was fitting. There are quite a lot of examples of Friulian online. This story is one of Aesop's fables called The Fox and the Crow. In the video where I talked about Romansh, I made a mistake and I said wolf instead of fox. So I just want to correct that here, and you can see how it does differ from Romansh if you go back to the other video and look at the sample there. Now for our next language, we have our guest to talk about it.
Hi, my name is Śeid. Let's talk about the Asturian language. Asturian is spoken in Asturias, Spain, which is bordering Galicia to the west, another autonomous community of Spain. As a Romance language, it's the most closest to Spanish, however it shares a lot of features with the neighboring Galician language. It's part of a dialect continuum most linguists refer to as Astur-Leonese, which not only includes Asturian, but also Leonese, spoken in Leon, and other dialects such as Mirandese, spoken in Portugal. One important feature of Asturian is that it's one of few Romance languages that retain Latin's three genders, masculine, feminine, and neuter, like Romanian, which is unlike other Romance languages, which cut out neuter and replace it with either masculine or feminine, mainly masculine. It's also considered an endangered language in Spain, but more of an effort to preserve the language is still strong. It's actually considered a protected language by Spain itself. For more information about the Asturian language itself, check out my video if you want more info.
Thanks for that, Śeid. I really enjoyed your Asturian video, and your latest video on Belarusian was your best. More about Śeid later. Dalmatian is very well known these days amongst language enthusiasts for being that Romance language that went extinct at the end of the 19th century. In 1898, Tuone Odaina, the last known person with any knowledge of the language who spoke the Velian dialect, was killed in an explosion, killing the language along with his death. Tuone, or in Italian Antonio Odine, had spent the last year of his life with the Italian linguist Matteo Bartoli, recording the Dalmatian language through, quote, words, stories, and accounts of his life, unquote. Here is the Our Father prayer as the sample text for Dalmatian. It's an example text that features on this series quite a lot. What I find interesting here is that word for father is tuota, and not some variation of pater. My hypothesis is that this comes from the Latin term tata, which was used to not mean your literal father, but instead a father figure in your life that you looked up to in ancient Roman society. It's a weird concept to think of having a word for that in English, but this was normal to the Romans. And I find this really quite fascinating. And obviously, the father figure it's referring to is God, but not your literal father. So I think that's a really interesting sort of cultural thing that Dalmatian has there. And I've not seen that in any other Romance language that I'm aware of, except it was either Aromanian or Istro-Romanian, one of the two. They also have this feature. And as another point, if you watched my previous video on language death, you should know the difference between a dead language and an extinct language. Given that nobody has made the effort to learn Dalmatian since its explosive death, it remains extinct. Will you perhaps be the first to bring it back? Once again, I want to remind you to not only check out Śeid's video on Asturian, but also his channel as a whole. Śeid has a lot of upcoming potential, and with each video, the quality and originality increases. It has been interesting following his development so far, but let's see if we can help his channel grow, and that will only develop further. As for me, this is all we have today. I am sadly going to announce that this will likely be the last video in this series, unless there is a really vocal demand for it in the following weeks. This is because not only am I beginning to run out of lesser-known Romance languages, but also the fact that many of these languages are hard to find anything about. The documentation for some of these languages is really scarce, and I have to do a lot of research just to find samples of the languages sometimes. Such as Romagnol earlier, that was quite hard to find that. Nonetheless, thank you for watching this video. I should hopefully be uploading next week, and tot ziens!